It is time to continue the 2025-26 season previews today, and we got the Edmonton Oilers this time around. These next two are going to be very special because it's the teams that have faced off in the last two Stanley Cup Finals, so let's hop right in. The 2025-26 season previews are in full swing. We are covering all 32 teams and previewing their upcoming seasons. We have now done Anaheim all the way up to Detroit, so if you want to be sure to check those out, check out the videos that I recently posted. But anyways, let's hop into the Edmonton Oilers, taking a look at the last 3 years of the Edmonton Oilers franchise. So starting off in 2022-23, where the team went 50, 23, and 9 for 109 points. They were 6th in the NHL. They lost in round 2 to the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, we know who they beat. Who they beat in the first round is going to be the same answer every single time for all three of these. But regardless, it was disappointing. The Oilers' offense just wasn't that great outside of McDavid and Draisaitl in those couple of games. Marchessault took over in Game 6. The overall defense for Edmonton was not that great either, and as a result, the Oilers lost in round 2. The following year, in 2023-24, was where some crazy shit went down. And excuse my poor language there, but this is a wild season. They went 49, 27, and 6 for 104 points. They were 9th in the NHL. Keep in mind, this was the same year where they started off like 2-12. They fired Jay Woodcroft. They hired Chris Knoblauch. Whole new management. And they go on this remarkable run to the Stanley Cup Finals first and foremost. They face the Florida Panthers. They go down 3-0 in the series. You think it's over, and they came back. And I don't know, and look, I'm young. I'm only 18 years old. I haven't witnessed a lot of Stanley Cup playoff runs, but that final was some of the best hockey and some of the best atmosphere I have ever watched as a fan. So I honestly, I don't know if anything's going to come close to that with the nostalgia and all that, but that was an incredible year. Obviously, they lost in Game 7, so it really doesn't even matter, to be honest with you. They didn't get the cup at the end, but unfortunate, but it does happen every now and then, and by every now and then, I mean every, 80 years. So, just want to put that out there. But in 24-25, they managed to get back. They went 48, 29, and 5 for 101 points. They were 9th in the NHL that year, so a little bit worse. Just a couple more regulation losses. And obviously, they did go on a run to the Stanley Cup Final. They played Florida again. This year, they weren't so lucky. They lost in 6 games. Florida, I feel like, kind of dominated them. The only 2 wins the Oilers got were in overtime. So I do want to just mention that. But regardless, it was a rough ending. And it felt like after 23-24, the reaction was just heartbreak and devastation. That team was sad. It felt like after this year, that team is now mad. Like Draisaitl and McDavid and that whole team is pissed coming into this year. So I just want to say that here. But overall, it should be a very interesting season, like always, for the Edmonton Oilers. Starting off here by looking at the management heading into 2025-26. You start off with Stan Bowman, who has been the general manager since this season, actually. He was hired at the beginning of the year because of the fact that Ken Holland was retiring, and now is the GM of the LA Kings. I digress. Anyways, Bowman definitely comes in. He made some controversial moves, like I didn't agree with them getting rid of Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg, but regardless, it happened. They signed Arvidsson and Skinner. Those moves just didn't work out. That wasn't even him, actually. It was Jeff Jackson. So I just want to preface that. But he's made some all right moves. The Wallman trade was a good deal. Overall, he's made some solid signings as well. And then Chris Knoblauch is the head coach. He's been there since midway through 2023-24. Every single year Knoblauch has been with the Oilers, he has gone to a Stanley Cup Final. So, and obviously that is 2 years. But it's fun to keep in mind. Overall, I have more trust in Knoblauch than I do Bowman. Bowman has made he's made good trades. His signings, although I did say most of them have been good, like I'm not a fan of the Frederick one. there's a couple that are definitely a little bit controversial, and then obviously there's the whole McDavid thing that is coming up here, which we will discuss as well. Looking at your key arrivals and key departures, let's start off on the key arrivals. You have Isaac Howard, Andrew Mangiapane, Curtis Lazar, David Tomasek, and Matt Tompkins are your key arrivals here. So starting off with Isaac Howard, the Iceman, one of the fun names in college hockey this past year. He won the Hobey Baker. He just wrapped up his junior year or maybe senior year even, in Michigan State University. So he is expected to come over to the Edmonton Oilers and play a full-time role. You'll see on the depth chart they have him pretty high, the Hockey News that is. So there's a lot of upside here for this kid. Same with Andrew Mangiapane. He is somebody who was all right last year in Washington. He could be a real solid middle six forward for the Oilers. So that's one that I'm very optimistic about. It's going to take a little bit to see where that goes, but overall, I like Mangiapane a lot. Lazar, good fourth-line center. He'll fit in there well. I feel like, the loss of Connor Brown and some guys on that fourth line definitely suck, but getting a guy like Lazar, who's been very serviceable in that role for a long time, it's going to do good for the Oilers for sure. And then Tomasek and Tompkins are more or less just depth players. I don't expect these guys to see a ton of NHL time. They are more or less players who will be down below with Bakersfield. But regardless, it still is some decent additions and some depth that is definitely added to the roster for sure. So overall, the key arrivals definitely helped out the forward core for sure. Looking at your key departures for the Edmonton Oilers, you would argue that some of these are actually good. So you start off with Corey Perry, Connor Brown, Evander Kane, Jeff Skinner, Victor Arvidsson, and John Klingberg. So Corey Perry, first and foremost, that curse that everybody's been talking about where he goes to a Stanley Cup final and loses, that is no longer on Edmonton's case. So if the Oilers win the Cup this year, I just want to say you can blame Corey Perry for the last two. Anyway, I digress. It definitely does suck losing him. He actually contributed a lot throughout the last two Cup runs. I thought he was a decent player, but had his negatives as well. Connor Brown was a good penalty killer, good fourth-line guy. He will definitely be missed there as well. Evander Kane, he will and won't be missed, because there were some points in Edmonton where he looked great. He was making some great plays, but during the Stanley Cup Finals, he was just not good at all. And then as well as that, too, he is a little bit overpaid, so I just want to say that there as well. Perry is off to L.A., Brown is off to New Jersey, Kane is off to Vancouver. Jeff Skinner is off to San Jose, so he's no longer with the team. Arvidsson is off to Boston. Those are two moves that just didn't work out, and it's very unfortunate that that's the way it went, because we looked at those signings when they were signed in July of 2024, and we said these moves were going to be really good. Like, Jeff Skinner has the upside of scoring 30 goals with McDavid. Yeah, no, that didn't work out at all. So I feel like, again, like those are just two moves that just didn't work out. They weren't like high impact. They didn't really affect the Oilers that much, obviously, because they're no longer on the team, either of them, but overall, it does definitely suck that they didn't work out. And then Klingberg, I don't know where he is. They signed him midway through the year. He might be on a team. I think it's the Sharks, actually. He's with the Sharks with Skinner. So regardless, I definitely think like the departures, some of them do suck, but they're not exponential losses in my opinion. And that being said, then you look at the Hockey News' depth chart for this team for 2025-26. So first and foremost, I am using the Hockey News' depth chart. That is so I don't forget anybody or do something stupid. So regardless, let's hop right in, starting off on the left wing side with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Isaac Howard, Trent Frederick, and Vasily Podkolzin rounding out your first four. And then you have Matthias Janmark as your extra forward there on that left wing side. So starting off there, Nugent-Hopkins, he's been a phenomenal player, a solid player for the last few years. Not what he was back in 2022-23 with that 100-point season. That was just a flash in the pan. But anyways, Nugent-Hopkins is still a solid player. Isaac Howard is an interesting case. I feel like the Hockey News might have him ranked too high here. I think it is very likely that coming into next year, Isaac Howard may struggle and he finds himself in Bakersfield. Or even yet, he doesn't even make the team out of camp. So I want to say that. I know they're expecting, and I know Oilers fans are expecting for Howard to come in here right away and just play phenomenal. That's not always how it goes. I think maybe he will benefit from some AHL time, at least a little bit of it. in his rookie year inside of the NHL. So I want to factor that in there as well. I do want to just mention that. Frederic, good third liner. He was very serviceable. I mean, he did look a little bit in the playoffs, but, so did most of the team. And then Podkolzin had his moments. Again, he had some clutch goals for the Oilers, I believe. No, that was Kapanen who scored against Vegas. But regardless, Podkolzin had some good goals in between there and provided some secondary depth for the Oilers. That was a good move by Stan Bowman. I like that move that they made in acquiring him. And then Janmark, serviceable depth forward. I feel like if Howard doesn't make this team, you just move Janmark right up. So there you go. Your center core, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Adam Henrique, and Curtis Lazar rounding out your first four. And then you have Noah Phillip as your extra forward. So we're going to get to the McDavid contract talks and stuff like that. I'm going to wait till the biggest questions to discuss that massive thing. But McDavid is McDavid, and Draisaitl is Draisaitl. Let's leave it at that. I feel like there's really no other way of explaining it. Again, the biggest qualm with me is, can they perform in the Stanley Cup Final? Yeah. They are phenomenal players. They will perform anywhere. So I'm not expecting I have no doubts with that. I'm not expecting anything there. So I got really nothing much to say, but good things about those two players. Adam Henrique, I like as a third-line center. I feel like he had his woes in the playoffs this year. But then again, so did, I feel like, every player on this team. So I want to factor that in there as well. Curtis Lazar, solid fourth liner there too. I enjoyed him. I believe in New Jersey this past year. I don't know. There's just so many players around the league. It's so difficult. And then Noah Phillip is more or less just a depth forward. Is really nothing more than that in my opinion. And then you look at the right wing side. You have Zach Hyman, Andrew Mangiapane, Matthew Savoy. You have Kasperi Kapanen, and then rounding out your first four. And then you have David Tomasek as your extra right wing there as well. So Hyman, I got criticism for him not being in my top 50 wingers list. Hyman is very up and down for me. I do have my doubts on where this kid's going to be able to finish and stuff like that. So Zach Hyman there for sure is interesting, but still a very good winger nonetheless. Mangiapane is kind of a wild card. He could be fun this year. Could be a good secondary scoring guy. I don't know about second line right wing, but regardless, we'll see. Savoy should make the team this year. He should be in the NHL this year. It's not like Howard where it's I don't know, maybe give it some time. Savoy should be in the NHL this year. So I want to just make that known there as well. And then guys like Kapanen and Tomasek, good depth. Kapanen scored some nice goals last year for the Oilers as well in the playoffs, so there's that factor as well. But overall, the forward core, I didn't feel yeah, they had their woes, but I didn't feel like the forward core was the problem. But that's the only thing they made changes to. So then you move on to the defense, where the defense I have my opinions about. So start off on the left shot side. You have Matthias Ekholm, Darnell Nurse, and Jake Wallman rounding out your first three. And then you have Josh Brown as your extra defenseman there. So Ekholm is the backbone of this blue line. He's the defensive maniac. He is the best defensive defenseman on this entire blue line. Besides maybe Brett Kulak, you could sometimes argue. But overall, Ekholm's the guy. Nurse. Darnell Nurse. I have seen so many speculations and so many things about how the Oilers should buy his contract out. Can't do that. He'll be on a longer term. You'll be paying him for longer. I've seen so much things on Nurse. It sucks. I believe he has 5 more years left on his deal. You kind of just have to get through it. Honestly, I don't really see any way they get out of this. You're going to have to keep this guy around. I know that he's kind of a defensive liability, but you really don't have a choice. Ken Holland got you wrapped in that situation. So, there you go. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they can somehow get rid of Darnell Nurse. But overall, Nurse is definitely one of the net negatives on that blue line. And then Jake Wallman. I like Wallman. I got no problems with Jake Wallman. He is a fun, little bit of an offensive type of defenseman there as well. I thought that was a good trade, acquiring him from the San Jose Sharks. So I like that trade there for sure from the Oilers. Wallman will be fun to watch this year with the first full season with Edmonton. And then Josh Brown, depth defender, honestly. On the right shot side, Evan Bouchard, Brett Kulak, and Ty Emberson are your first three. And then you have Troy Stetcher as your extra guy. Now keep in mind, Stetcher and Emberson do kind of rotate, so you could see that throughout the season. Bouchard, look. I have this debate every year. He is not the greatest defensively. I totally understand that. And it feels like what's ironic about him is whenever he makes mistakes, it's like game-costing mistakes. Or the first mistake in the game. Like, it's pretty brutal what he has to deal with. Brett Kulak is a very serviceable second-pairing defenseman, so I don't really got much of a problem with him there. And then Emberson and Stetcher feel like kind of the same guys. They can play decent third-pairing defense. They can minute munch for you. So those are two guys I don't really have a problem with. Overall, this is the same, and this is the one where I don't have a big problem with it. Like, I'm not... You could have definitely made some changes, but again, what are you really going to do? Like, what are the best options you're going to bring in? So again, that is a factor. They could really use another defensive defenseman to just play defense on the back end. They have to be hunting that at the trade deadline. There is no doubt about it. So definitely something you want to monitor there for sure. But overall, the D-core, it's still solid. Like, I like it. It's good enough to make a Stanley Cup final, but I don't know if it's good enough to win a Stanley Cup final. We'll find out. And then this is where it's going to prompt the most discussion for sure. Stuart Skinner, Calvin Pickard, and Matt Tompkins are your three goaltenders here this time around. So Tompkins, I'll start with, actually, ironically enough, is a good third-string goaltender. Nothing really much to say about him. Stuart Skinner. I hate having this discussion. It's just so frustrating. I wish we didn't have to have it, but we do. With Skinner, the biggest thing is just the consistency. And he can be, when he is consistent, especially in the playoffs, he can be just so freaking good. He can be so freaking phenomenal. And I just don't understand how when he gets inconsistent and when he's just not good, he's awful. There is no in between. I really wish that they didn't throw all the chips into the Skinner bucket, because I'm a little bit worried. Again, like the last 2 years, like, you don't lose back-to-back finals that often. And when you lose them with the same goaltender, and that's been one of the bigger issues, you don't think you should take a look at that? So I'm really wondering why the Oilers were like, they even said, they were like, yeah, we'll address it, we'll take a look at it, and they did nothing. So that shows me how serious this really is to them. They could have really used a bona fide starting goaltender who has playoff experience that actually counts for something. I know Skinner is good in game fours, is good after loss. I don't care, okay? Because if he was good, Edmonton would have a cup right now. At least one. At least one. So, I know not all of it lies on him, and even Calvin Pickard, too, who I feel like has been better than Skinner. But the fact, like, you look at his playoff career numbers, the fact that you're having a below a 900 is just not acceptable. It's not. We are, like, I understand that, you know, you look at some of these goaltenders the last couple of years, they're not, like, shut down. They're not shutting, like, they're not doing everything. Like, the last time where a goalie really locked in and won his team a Stanley Cup championship was Andrei Vasilevsky. I would say besides that 2021 Cup run, beforehand, there weren't a lot of goalies who were locking in, but sometimes you need that. You at least need a goalie who, when the going gets tough and your defense makes a mistake, which no defense is perfect, you can rely on your goalie to make the save. And it feels like every single time Evan Bouchard or somebody else makes a mistake, and again, maybe it's not all Skinner's fault all the time, but he needs to at least save some of these. And that's the biggest qualm with me with that. You look at these other goalies who have been through so many Cup Finals before, and they, like Bobrovsky, he doesn't have the sexiest playoff numbers, but when he can lock in, he can lock in. So I feel like Skinner is not the answer for me. It was actually one of the biggest questions, is Skinner really the answer? I don't think so, in my opinion. So overall, the goaltending is my biggest weakness with this. I'm not confident in Skinner at all this year. I'm not fooled by any of the regular season stats, any of the playoff stats. When they get to the final, is he going to be the guy? I guess we'll find out for the third time. So, I did have a couple of big questions that I wanted to ask you guys here, but we're just going to hop right into the biggest one for me is Connor McDavid. Extension when? So that's the biggest thing we're asking ourselves. Now, ironically enough, I'm recording this on September 3rd around midnight. So obviously, it's almost September, regardless. So a year ago today, on September 3rd, Leon Draisaitl signed the big $14 million contract. And that he was looked at as the highest paid player in the NHL at that point. And we all said to ourselves, yeah, makes sense. The NHL's going up, the cap's going up, makes sense. We all said McDavid was going to get more. And McDavid will get more. The matter of is when. And McDavid has said that he wants to win in Edmonton. He has all intentions to stay in Edmonton. I don't think McDavid's that kind of guy where he would say that and then leave anyway. So I am confident in that with him. And as well as that too, with guys like Bob Stauffer saying that, quote, he's not worried about the McDavid extension drama and all that stuff. So I'm not worried about it either. The real question is like, how much is it going to be? Like, how much are we going to pay him? And I feel like, realistically, it's going to be probably around 15.5, in my opinion. I think, like, that's the only way they get this done. And that's the other thing, too. You got to think about it as well. Like, the Oilers make all these deadline moves, and they don't have the cap space to sign McDavid. So, if they're going to make this work, especially with the new CBA rules and stuff, where, like, you have to have cap-compliant rosters in the playoffs, you got to figure that out. So, that's definitely something the Oilers are going to be thinking about here for a long time, but I guess we'll see when it happens. So, that being said, then, it is time for the final question surrounding the Oilers. Playoffs? Standings? Cup. So, again, those are the things that we're asking ourselves here. So, playoffs, yes. Standings, probably, it depends. Second or third is my take. You could argue first. I do think Vegas is going to take over that first spot with just Marner as, like, Marner, Eichel, and that roster is just insane to me still. But overall, I do think, in my opinion, that the Oilers will finish around second or third. It depends who they're battling with, whether it's LA, Vancouver, Calgary, whatever. I think they finish around second or third. First isn't out of the question. And Cup is definitely possible. Like, look, you make it 2 years in a row. And what's wild is that I saw so many people after the Oilers made it in 2024 where people said the Oilers would never get back. Would never get back. And you know what they were saying after they made it to 2? They said that the Oilers would never get back. I am not believing that crap for a second. So the Oilers can absolutely 100% make it back to the final and and contest for a Stanley Cup. It depends who they're playing. Honestly, it kind of feels like the West tears each other apart and then Florida or whoever makes it to the finals on the East side just kind of, takes it. So that's what it's felt like the last like three or so years. Preliminary thoughts in the comment section down below. It does change per year. Some sides are more competitive, and sometimes some sides are more of a bloodbath and all that stuff. But regardless, I am confident in the Oilers getting back to the Stanley Cup Final. There is no doubt on my mind that it can happen. Preliminary thoughts down below. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to like the video down below and subscribe if you are new. But anyways, that is it for me. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.